I got pregnant for my daughter when I was 15. Her dad came home, he had joined the service when I got pregnant, and he offered to marry me and asked me to give her up for adoption. So kind of one for the other. Here's a ring if you give the baby away.
Mm-hmm.
The reason a tree doesn't just grow straight and true is because life is difficult. The planet is extreme. We mold based on all of these unpredictable elements around us in this big swirling ball floating in the universe.
Yeah.
You don't realize you need a tool until you're in the middle of a project, whatever that project might be, and you're like, I need this tool. And then after you've overcome, you have that tool.
A lot of what you shared openly and honestly, you might not even understand just how inspiring it is, just how much strength and perseverance and commitment and faith. I hope others see like what's possible when you keep going. Well, Jenny, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for taking some time to be with me here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we had this awesome experience. I feel super fortunate to have had a chance to work with you. And I shared, on socials the final creation, and I want to talk about, that process, but it's just been really an honor to have some of your work in my life and to have been able to create something with you.
Yeah, the honor was mine as well. It was really fun getting to know you in that way. It's so funny, so often with my clients, I get to know them in this capacity, and then I meet them in, like, whether it's video or in real time, and it's really cool. Hold on. Cherise, go outside. Sorry, the dog.
I get it. No problem. I get it. Yeah, I bet. I think the way that you approach things is very much a personal experience that I admire, and I'm sure there's a lot of connections that happen as a result, which is probably a fun part of, and maybe it's an intentional part of why you do what you do.
Yeah, I mean, connection is 9/10 the law, because in order to do what I do, I have to really understand what you want, right? What my client wants, and translate their feelings and their experiences into an image, and then to the loom. So it's it hinges on connection, and it's so important to me. Like the value of that, what it becomes, the friendships that become the aftermath of the creation. I mean, I've maintained relationships with most of my clients. It's really a cool experience for everyone.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I want to go back and connect the dots as to how you arrived at that work. But just to kind of tug on this part a little bit more, I think we live in an interesting world where people are connected in a lot of different ways, but you've a following, people know what you do, what you're doing is often in a niche, pretty high profile. People are seeing your straps on, very well-known artists. Mm-hmm. And so there's like a thing that I found was happening where people would reach out to me and go, oh my gosh, you have one of hers and she's so cool and I follow her, and and there's a lot of ways in which there's a bit of a community. Some of it is in a virtual sense, but then there's a deeper connection that happens there too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, of course, because the world is connected the way that it is, there is the virtual link between people. I mean, I'm sure we'll circle into how the evolution of my work becoming so well known has happened, but it was because of Instagram. Somebody seeing it, the right person seeing it. It was Oteil, and then it just exploded. Which is just amazing, and I do feel like I know so many people, and as I mentioned before, and then you see them in person and it's like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. We can hug that out. On the other side of that, you have the visceral connection. You have that true heart connection that may have stemmed from virtual, the linkage there, but it's when you randomly see somebody in the crowd that maybe I've chatted with and I don't even know who they are. I might know their username or something of that sort. But then when I actually see them in person, it is so beautiful because it just takes that spark and just absolutely ignites it. And that deeper connection is the spirit. I mean, it's what's behind all of us. So, I mean, to be able to work in that capacity and in that space, in the ether, it's where I spend a lot of my time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And with the dog barking.
Well, that's all part of it.
Yeah.
There's I love I think it's in Surrender. I can't remember. It's Michael Singer's Surrender Experiment, I think, where he, finally escapes his life and builds his meditation retreat in the woods on his large acreage, and he sits down to meditate, and the dog, in the neighboring property is barking, and he's like, you gotta be kidding me,
No, it's so real because life is messy and imperfect. One of the hardest things for me to bead is a tree. Isn't that interesting? Because they're so perfect in their imperfections that in my work, I feel like it's so exact, this has to be here exactly, with artwork, especially loom work, because of how everything connects and fits in. But a tree isn't that, it's however the sun is that day is how that branch developed, or that year, or the wind, or whatever it might be. And so to recreate the beautiful imperfection of nature in its divine perfection it's a trip.
Well, let's talk about the trip. Let's go back to the beginning, and unpack kind of how you got here. Tell me just kind of early childhood, your family dynamics, where you're from. Give me whatever feels important from those like super early years.
I mean, it's all important, right?
Yeah.
It's what makes us who we are, is our context. I was raised in the Midwest, in the west side of Michigan, Rockford, this little town just north of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was beautiful. It was much more, it's grown quite a bit. It's a pretty big thing now, but it was small, a little Crestwood Elementary, and it was my sister and I with my mom and dad, and happy house, happy home, pretty easy childhood. My grandma lived with us, and she, my parents owned the costume shop that she worked at. So I was around that creativity from the very beginning of my life. And she was a seamstress, so she would make the patterns and she would sew all of these costumes together. And it was really a part of my childhood. When I would not want to go to school, and I did love school, I love learning, but when I just needed time, I'd go to the costume shop with grandma and just hang out with all of these amazing costumes. And some of them were vintage, like actual 1920s, 1890s true outfits that were worn then and just maintained pristine. And so being around all of that creativity and imagination, I truly feel lent to who I am and what I've done. Sewing machines I never got into. They kind of terrify me. Like the idea that your foot is controlling this needle that's coming at your hands is a little much. But I've always been around it, and I was really blessed in a very loving home.
Tell me a little bit about your parents that they were in the costume shop business. That's a first on the podcast. So
I know, it's kind of wild.
What's their path towards something so unique?
Well, and it's so, my grandma, because she was the seamstress there, and the original owners of Oteil and Van Heften, which was the name of the costume shop, which dates back to the 1800s in Grand Rapids, was a hat shop. The owners turned it into the costume shop and they were selling it, and my grandma worked there, and my dad was like, well, shoot, if we don't have the costume shop, my mom doesn't have a job, so what do we do? And they decided to buy the costume shop. And so, because they had always been around it, because that's where my grandma worked. And so it just became ours. And so my entire life I had spent time going there. There's things you'll never forget the smell of.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And because it's an old building in Grand Rapids, downtown Grand Rapids, by that I mean like mold and dust and mildew and pine saw. But it's like a smell of my youth. It's kind of funny. But they just nurtured that for my grandma, which was wonderful. I mean, they had the means, so they did it. They worked at Cutler, H Cutler, which was a baby clothes company. My dad was an executive, my mom was clerical, so it was just very, very wholesome. It was just really lovely. We were tight.
I love that. And tell me about you as a kid. I mean, I get that you're seeing this kind of creative energy around you. You're in this wholesome, loving family. I mean, what a beautiful story. I love, that. It's
Very
really
blessed.
nice to hear. So tell me, what was it like for you? What were you into? What were you interested in? What were you like as a young person?
Super cuddly, very emotional. It's my sister was 17 months older, so you know how you always try to run with the sibling as much as you could. But I mean, she was a grade above and kept, tried to keep her own like little cool niche and everything. And we lived on a dead end street, so it was just all the kids. We just were I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so it was, if you're not bleeding, I don't want to hear about it. How bad are you bleeding? Come home when it's not too late. It's just so easy, and it was safe. It was good. But I was a very loving, cuddly kid. I always was either drawing or latch hook rug. My grandma would always have something for me to do, crochet or knit. All of the things, whatever was creative, I did. I would organize my stuffed animals so meticulously, and I really loved soft and beautiful, and I mean, I thought my mom was the most beautiful person in the whole wide world, as it should be. And she had this one coat that was like fur, and I remember cuddling that. So I was just a very cuddly child, and very, very emotional. I was picked on a lot because I was so sensitive. I think I was an easy target. But and it was a very very Caucasian, you know, Midwest town, and I was definitely the brownest kid at school. But my people would pull me aside and say, you know what? People go on vacation to have your skin color, all of that. And it's really interesting because it wasn't until much later in life when I was traveling powwows that I was like, oh, I guess maybe I am not just mainstream, or I never thought of myself as different, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, I didn't really think my sister had red hair and freckles, so that just goes back to my grandfather's family, and there were five Indian children and five Irish kids. It just, the DNA just split right down the center. So I didn't really think of myself as different. You don't spend all this time in the mirror when you're a kid. You're just a kid, right? And then as I went through life, and sometimes I would be under the thumb of maybe prejudice, in the world, because it exists. It's always existed. And I think that's part of what made me so sensitive, but I always had the most beautiful people around me telling me, it's okay. Like, you're wonderful. It's okay. That none of that matters. And it doesn't. And I think that having learned that at such a young age, it's not that it gave me thick skin, but I think that it just gave me a better understanding that we're all different, and boy, isn't that beautiful. It just truly is. It never held me back from doing things or any of that sort. There's just things that stick out in your memory, of how kids are mean on the playground. They are. Kids are mean, can be mean on the playground. And like I said, it just all lent to accepting myself in a very whole way at a very young age, because what choice do we have? I see a lot of people struggle and not be able to accept themselves, and I mean, almost more now than ever, and it's a shame. Like somebody should write a book. Maybe I should write a book. Just hug yourself because that's what we've got. No matter where we go, here we are, and it's divine. So, yeah, as a kid, I just love to experience and appreciate and cuddle.
Yeah. And what's your mother's ethnicity?
So my mom is Irish, Indian, and German.
Hmm. Okay.
And then, I mean, it's America, so probably much more than that, but that is what comes through.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned. I'm just curious. Just maybe you can clarify that have landed, and it sounds like you did that fairly young, in this place of it's all divine. What else? What more do we have? Hug yourself, and acknowledge that that's not so easy for everybody to do, especially young people. And I was wondering, and I think you said it, that it was something you were able to do fairly quickly. Those, yeah, like kids are tough, and like playground stuff happens, and there's certainly a lot of prejudice, and not just with children, but when you're a child, a lot of those things can be really, really hard for people. It can cause deep rooted insecurity. It can be traumatic. It can cause people to act out, to whatever, right? And so how do you, or what do you credit your kind of internal sense of being able to move through that the way that you did?
Right, that perseverance. There's so many variables, right? Because, like I said, we're all just a matter of context. Who we are is our experiences. And, it is interesting because I could have had the exact same experience as some other person, but you have two different variables and you have a completely different outcome, right? I mean, we grew up faith-based. We went to church every Sunday. And it was a very loving, I didn't have some crazy dogmatic experience that people have going to church. I had a lovely experience going to church. Sunday school was fun and creative, and we were told just all about love, right? So I had that, and that was definitely an integral part of my life. And really just parents and my grandma, I can't say enough about, her living, living with us and being two doors away, just always there to say it's okay. So I think that when people do have that very loving and understanding and nurturing part of their life, I think that it helps them to persevere and overcome a lot of things. And I know that not everybody has that, which is unfortunate. I wish that everybody did. And I think that that definitely lends to whether or not they can overcome so much. Because somebody can have the exact same experience, like I said, and have a completely different outcome. I could have really grabbed a hold of I was a victim on the playground or of society. And I don't know if it was I don't know if it was a choice. I don't really know the answer to that. It's who I am, and you can't take divinity away from anything. Is our life destined, and is there one outcome that was predetermined in that Akashic record before we were even here? I don't really know the answer to that either. But it's all the elements that lead to the inevitable outcome. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know, but I do feel like there's definitely something powerful about the unconditionally loving household, and probably I would say more often than not, although I really don't know, having faith, right, and faith may be the way in which you described it, where it probably has a much better success rate, but the combination of having strong, loving parents, a loving household, an elder like your grandmother, I think that's something we've really lost in our society, is
Absolutely.
the power of elders, and some faith, and that kind of ingrained in a child, is going to probably allow you to persevere a lot more. It just gives you an internal kind of compass that maybe others don't have.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, all of those elements, and I guess it's things that you might even take for granted. You don't think much about until you get halfway through your life and you're like, oh, okay, so here's where I am. And these are all of the ingredients that contributed to my souffle, if you will. But I really, really was lucky in that respect to having my grandmother live with us. And it's interesting that you point that out because especially in current times and in our culture, grandparents get put into a home, and I understand end of life and I understand circumstances. It's not that I'm judging people who have to put maybe an elder in a home, but I was really fortunate to have her come stay with us and be with us the way that she was. And then on the flip side, my sister was only 17 months older and in the same home, same loving parents. And I don't think that she loved herself in the same capacity, which is really, really hard, and inevitably took her life. But yeah, it's really interesting how two people in the very same setting, same household can have two such different personalities and outcomes.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm curious and share what you feel comfortable sharing. But, as you and your sister are both raised in the same home, and as, you start to, get older and move, through your teenage, I'm not sure, where things unfold for you, but I am kind of curious to hear about how you continue to move into your next phase of life and hear more about whatever transpired with your sister.
Well, Carrie, we can do this and then we can go back to the more fun stuff because, losing someone isn't fun, of course. So Carrie and I were close, but two very different people. Because that's just true. People are different people. She was definitely more outgoing, wanted to dance in the front of the room, whereas I still dance maybe in the back of the room, just very, very different. She was confident and she was beautiful and she was fun and she was wonderful. I think that she had always, we're a voluptuous bunch. I don't know what it is, the German, I'm not sure, but this also I embrace about myself. I Peloton every day and still I'm extra padded, right, for all that cuddle. But Carrie didn't have as much confidence in that, I don't think, that regard. And ultimately she ended up getting a gastric bypass surgery. And again, I try to be sensitive and careful about that because many people consider that a success for their life and it has helped them in a lot of ways, whereas that's not my experience. The malnutrition took her. It just took her. And it's very painful. And so then, of course, that was kind of started to snowball in around 2010. So I think there was a lot of opioid things. Doctors were very willing to prescribe for pain. So between malnutrition and pain medication, it took her at 41 years old. Yeah, a couple weeks shy of being 42 years old. So again, that book that's waiting to be written about just hug yourself. If you're voluptuous, be voluptuous and then go for a walk and eat a salad. I don't really... I know it's not that simple, but I think that it just stemmed from her having an idea of what beauty was, of what was appealing and how she would be comfortable in herself rather than just being comfortable in herself. And it's not just Carrie that went through that. I see that all over in all different forms, socioeconomics, skin color, just keeping up with the Joneses, or even the people who idealize the juvenile delinquent, right? It's what you idealize and want to become, that some people just take it to such an extreme that they lose themselves in this desire to be something that they're just not. And I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. I wish someone did, right, about how you can save yourself from all of that. And I feel like I'm really blessed that, like I said, at a really young age, I just understood that maybe I'm a little different, and that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm sorry. I say I'm sorry, and maybe I don't know if that's even the right thing to say, because
It's the right thing to say. It's what we have, right?
yeah. Well, I think maybe the right thing to say is like I feel for you, because I feel that was and is still probably painful. Of course, to lose a loved one, and in a way that's hard to watch and to see and to be with. I really feel for you, and I also I'm curious about your beliefs, because when we think about the divine and we think about the things we don't know, is it already written, right? All we really can do is create our own beliefs. And that might include, the things that we know we don't know. I wonder in your case, gosh, it sounds like you just two people growing up in the same home, with very different ways of being. And so I wonder, kind of how you think about, and maybe speak to, how you moved into your next chapter, but go where you want and how you process that piece, and hold that in a divine frame, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's throughout the course of all that I've been through, I've seen so many different things, whether it's the crystal shop teaching me some things and wondering, is New Ageism the answer, or Theosophy, and all of these things that branch out into all these different philosophies about spirit and soul and the hereafter, all of it. I've taken in so much knowledge and wondered so many things, and it does come back to the faith that I grew up with. Like when I go to church and I hear those hymns, some people might call it meditation room, like it's yoga. It's where, however it is you pray, is a very personal experience. And I do not beseech anybody for the way that they do that. For me, it's what I know. It's going home. It's understanding the things. And faith, I guess, is the all-encompassing word for what does come next after we're here. Because we know that measurably, in a scientific way, energy doesn't go away. It just changes, right? So, and the human mind doesn't want to believe that we just cease to exist. Okay, so I'm just done. That's odd. All of this love and all of this creation, everything I experience just doesn't exist. And so, in a lot of the psychology classes that I had taken in college, talked about how the human mind categorizes faith and the forever in a way to maintain that ego sense of we don't just cease to exist, which I can't just, that was one of my professors. He was like, no, we're all just electricity and chemicals. That's all we are, and I'm like, okay, well, that's cool, for what and how and why and since when and all of the things also, which leads into faith. But, even losing Carrie, I think that in a lot of ways, what a soul comes here to do, comes here and does that. And we can categorize it into, oh, that person might have been selfish, or this person was lost, or this person didn't have the right answer. But maybe it was selflessness. Maybe they came here to teach so many people so many things at the expense of their discomfort. Who even really knows? All we're left to do is speculate until we do pass. And I do believe that, my mom always explained it as when you die, you just understand. You don't have any buts, and you don't have any questions, and you don't have any anger, and you don't have anything. You just know love, and you just know it all. So I don't know. I really like that foundation. I hold on to that a lot, and I guess try to be as benevolent as possible, but I'm far from benevolent. I do pray for that quite often, and I don't know, a long way to go.
Oh, it's a work in progress.
You
But
know, and then, yeah, it is a work in progress.
it's always an interesting thing just to be like transparent with you. I wonder sometimes myself. I've had my own experience when with in particular with my father when he passed away, and he lived a very difficult life, and I came to believe, and it is something that I believe, but it took me a long time to get there, and I would say I believe it with a fairly high degree of certainty, but like, how do you know for sure, right? But my belief is that his life was a part of a divine perfection. And it was there for me to really get a fully embodied experience that isn't one that I necessarily would want to give to my children, but it's one that I think was important and necessary and very ultimately potentially beneficial for me and for my kids and generations to come, right? But it was hard, and it wasn't what some people wouldn't subscribe to that. They would say, and many have told me, bullshit, could have done better, didn't have to be like that, whatever, right? And so I never want to put that on someone else, but it is, I think there's truth in all of it, but I do believe that there can be, and maybe is, a divine purpose in somebody's life that maybe ends in a way that we feel is too soon or tragic or should be different. And I think sometimes that becomes something that people look at and they say it's some sort of rationalization. Faith. Sometimes people think, oh, they hang on to it because it's all they have. And maybe that's true for some, but I don't know. For me, it became something that wasn't. It felt very true and real. And I don't know. I heard you say maybe something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. You explained it beautifully. And it's funny when people say it should have been or could have been or that's bullshit, because does it change anything? It doesn't change your experience. What it does lend to is you having a beautiful experience with your own children, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there is that. I think that we, if possible, we try to say, okay, this is what I had from my youth that I appreciate and I will send forward and I will do for my children. And then there are things that I don't appreciate, that was hard for me, that I will do my best not to do forward. And sometimes you learn that the second your child is born, and sometimes you learn that when your kid is 30, right? In my experience. And, it's really hard to know exactly where that path takes. I've had people listen to my life story and say, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh, why are you sorry? My life is a beautiful success story. And life is hard. To go back to the tree, the reason a tree doesn't just grow straight and true is because life is difficult. The planet is extreme. And how are we, because we're humans, how are we any different than the tree? Or, obviously we're different in so many ways, but not as far as, we mold based on all of these unpredictable elements around us in this big swirling ball floating in the universe, this one universe. There's so many variables and so many unpredictable things, and they're freaking harsh.
Yeah.
They're just hard. Life is harsh. And yes, of course there's trauma. Obviously I don't even understand some of the trauma that goes on in the world for people. I try, and I'm empathetic to trying to understand that and hold that space for them. I was very blessed to not have extreme trauma at a young age. You know, I was never violated. I was never abused, none of those things. So I'm very, very blessed to have had a safe place to grow up. And my heart absolutely goes out to so many people. And I've seen people who were put in these terrible positions and grew to be very strong and helpful. And what makes them different than the person who lashes out and becomes, you know, poor Ed Gaines, or you know what I mean, like any of this, who really knows the answers to all of that. You know, I mean, it can be as simple as a loving mother and a loving father, but I don't think that it is just that simple. You know, but life is harsh, and it does make us a beautiful, imperfect, wild, perfect tree all at the same time. You know, I got pregnant for my daughter when I was 15. So I was young. You know, I was, you know, wholesome. My parents, long story, they divorced when I was 14 and then remarried when I was in my 30s. So, like, it's very full circle in that regard as far as being a child of, you know, my parents. But, you know, like, so therefore you're 14 and you're like, oh, what are these parts of my body? And so you go discover, and I didn't get very far down the path before I discovered, oh, that's what happens there. Not that I was unaware of how reproduction happened, but what was divine is I got Julia. I got my firstborn, and I was 15 when I got pregnant. I was 6 months pregnant on my 16th birthday. And I guess I'll just go ahead and share it all. So her dad came home. He had joined the service when I got pregnant, and he came home in a surprise for my birthday and offered to marry me and asked me to give her up for adoption. So kind of one for the other. Here's a ring if you give the baby away. I mean, of course, it's more in depth than that, but it was really hard. I actually kept that a secret, and my daughter and I are as close as I guess two people can possibly be in a lifetime. She's an absolute divine blessing, but I kept that from her. Nobody knew. My parents knew, my sister knew, and one of my girlfriends knew. They're the only people who knew that I considered giving Julia up for adoption. I guess my aunt and uncle knew because they wanted to adopt her, and I thought that'd be weird, and some of Julia's dad's family knew. But I couldn't do it. I had her. I still made sure, you know, okay, I was 16 and I knew you need tons of protein and you do not have NutraSweet. And I guess shrimp maybe isn't supposed to be on the list, but I couldn't eat enough shrimp, so I did. And I mean, she seems fine. But like, I was very determined to create a really healthy human, even though I was 15 going on 16 years old. And I was on bed rest for 20 of those weeks because my blood pressure was really high, like that horrible borderline toxemia. So I just watched a lot of Night Court because that's what happened to be on TV a lot. And we had a pool, so I was in the pool a lot. It was a very hot summer, the summer of 91. And I went in labor, and I knew it. I was, you know, the doctor said, you know, you're not. I was 2 weeks late. He's like, you have to come in Monday. This baby is overdone. And then Saturday I woke up and I was like, oh my goodness, I think I might be in labor. So I called my aunt, and she came over, and she showed up. She was always late, and she showed up all frantic, like, oh, I'm late. And we were just laying in the pool. She's like, well, I thought it was late. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to go to the hospital. Yeah, it's comfortable in the pool. So finally got serious enough, went to the hospital, and what a perfect delivery. I don't know, like maybe Laura Ingalls Wilder had it right, delivering babies so young, but it was textbook. Go there, water breaks, have a baby. It was perfect. No epidural, no drugs, just had a baby. And the second I saw her, I was like, oh, her name is Julia, and she's mine, and don't give her formula. I'm going to nurse her because that's what we do with these things, right? And it was beautiful. I didn't have anything because I thought I was giving her up for adoption. We didn't have a bed. We didn't have a car seat. We, you know, didn't have anything. And I just called my mom, and my mom was so awesome during all of it. My parents were divorced, but they were both very, very supportive and wonderful through my entire pregnancy. My dad's first comment was, "How'd that happen?" And then my mom went off the hook, and I was like, "Okay, well, now you guys are fighting, so I'm going to go ahead and go eat a Pop-Tart or something." But they were both so supportive, and my dad was there for the entire delivery until the stitching started, and then he's like, "I gotta bail, this is too much." And my mom, we were up really late, and when I called my mom right away after she had left, I said, I need nursing bras, I'm keeping this baby. And she was so happy, but she had wanted to be supportive, so she didn't say, "Oh, please don't do that, you'll regret it, I don't know if you can handle not having you are Jenny and this is your child, and I don't know if that'd be good." But she was so good, and she just let me come to that on my own. And that was by far the best decision of my entire life, was taking Julia home and not knowing what the heck was going to go on. And also, thank heavens, she was the easiest, healthiest, most wonderful baby.
So how does that then, shape your young adult life? I mean, you mentioned college, but I don't know, now you're a teenage
Sure. Well, I still had to finish
mother.
high school. I mean, I had to finish high school. I was going into my junior year. So I still have my junior year, how you get a pass or student ID. And I've got Julia sitting on my lap, right? For my when she was 6 weeks old and going into my junior year of high school. I went to an alternative school so that I could still nurse her. I couldn't, I had a baby and I was a junior in high school, 16 years old. I couldn't do daycare, right? Like, that wasn't an option. But I had to finish high school. That wasn't an option not to. So I found an alternative school, and I was able to bring Julia with me. And there were only 2 kids in class. One of my dear friends, Jake, his son was born in the room next to Julia, which is crazy. Like, I feel like sisters can't even plan this thing unless they, plan C-sections. But naturally, my friend Jake's partner at the time went into labor at the same time, and Austin was born 3.5 hours before Julia was. And so these were the only 2 kids in the daycare, and it was really, really sweet. And when I needed a nurser, I would say, "Okay, it's time," and I'd go out. Or if I was in the middle of a test, I'd bring her into class and nurse her in class. Chemistry was a little hard to miss, so she would come to class for chemistry. Everybody around me made it easy. My sister was an integral part of Julia's life, a very, very important part of Julia's life, and she was very hands-on with Julia. Almost like the father figure, only my sister, it worked. It worked. It was very loving, and that's all you can ask for your kids, is a safe and loving environment. You don't really need the fancy things. If they have what they need, eventually they get what they want, like the wants come later. And that's how my kids grew up. My older kids, they grew up in more of you get everything you need and tons of love and some extra things every now and then, but they're good people. So however that formula ended up being, they're adults and they're amazing, and I'm really, really lucky. But through all the adversity, because it could have been a completely different story, right? A 16-year-old mom, it doesn't work that way for everybody. I feel very, very fortunate. And again, I have my family to thank and the support of everybody to make that possible. So I graduated early from high school just because I needed to go do life, right? It's you have to go do it. But it was when Julia was 1 year old, so 1992. There was a Riverside powwow. So Grand Rapids has 2 local powwows at Riverside Park, and one in June and one in the fall. And I always went to the powwows. I love powwow. It's beautiful. And have you been to a powwow?
No.
Oh, they're incredible. I grew up in Michigan. They're definitely near you. It's beautiful. It's a gathering of Native Americans, and there's a host drum and then several drums, and they drum and they sing, and then they're in the center of the arbor that's blessed, and it's got cedar, sage, sweetgrass, and tobacco, and the arbor is roofed with cedar boughs. And then dancers come in full regalia, We called them outfits because you should never say costume. And then I think regalia is the French word for costume. So it was like this funny thing at powwow. But so people would come in with their outfits and dance. And there's the honor dances. And then there's the different types of dances. There's jingle dress and traditional and grass dancers. And it's just really amazing. The sound of the drum and the smell of the sweetgrass, you and sage, you take that home with you. It just really, really beats into your soul. So I always had gone to powwow and loved it. And I happened to go with a couple girlfriends when Julia was almost a year old. So it was June of 92. And my girlfriend Michelle and I decided to split the cost of one of those little wire looms, those the kinds like maybe you used on Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, right, when you're a kid. And we split the cost of that and bought some beads, and Michelle took it home for a couple weeks, and then she brought it over and said, "This is what I figured out. Have fun." And I was like, all right. It was summer vacation from high school, and Julia still took naps. So in my downtime, because I didn't drive till I was 21, so it's not like I was gallivanting anywhere. When I went somewhere, I was at the mercy of my sister, my mom, or some friends who wanted to drive me somewhere. So we had a lot of time at home, and I started beading. And I will tell you that even on that little wiry, rickety loom, the second I started putting those beads on that needle and stringing them, it just was an understanding. There was a knowledge that I just had, and an awakening in me. It was like, this is how I can create. Like all of those childhood things, all of the knitting, the sewing, the latchhook, the drawing, all of that just made sense. And I had my medium. It's almost as though my medium in the ether was just waiting for me to discover this. And then that year for Christmas, my mom had my Uncle Steve make me my first wooden adjustable loom. And it was a beautiful loom. I still have it. I still use it. And it was a real loom. Like it wasn't wiry. Like it was so well made and beautiful. And my aunt Kathy put all of these beads from her collection into, this box. My mom had bought a big pink box, and the local band was Space Brothers, and I slapped a Space Brothers sticker on there, and just full of everything I'd need: design paper and needles and thread and beads and dishes and all of the things. That was the best Christmas gift that shaped my entire life.
Wow. So you really knew it. You knew it at the time. I mean, not that you knew where it would go, but
No, I never dreamed this.
Yeah, but you knew there was something about this that felt, and I know sometimes you can look back on that and recognize it, but you felt it at the time.
Oh yes, it was home. It was absolutely home for me, a way to express myself and to not be idle. I'm not good with idle. I don't just sit and do nothing. It's just hard for me to do nothing. And even true with like a 1-year-old when you're still in high school, there's also downtime. So what do you do with that after the laundry's folded and the carpet's vacuumed? You create. And so I did know, and this, can lead back to people say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Your life must have been so hard, having a child so young. And in the throes of it, you don't sit back and go, oh my gosh, this is so hard. You're just doing it, right? But if I hadn't had Julia, I don't know if I would have gotten that loom. I don't know. I probably would have. I liked school, so I don't know if I would have dropped out, but I'd be more into partying and definitely more Grateful Dead concerts, which isn't a bad thing by any means, not by a long shot. But this is so substantial, right? It was my future. Not, of course, obviously my child is my future, but I don't think I would have gone to that powwow that day to buy that loom and made time for beading. Maybe I would have. Who knows, right? Because this is the path and this is the story. This is what happened. But nothing but beauty has come out of all of that. And it was the following fall. So I graduated in 93. And then I think it was that fall, powwow. I don't know, it was in 93, 94. My cousin and I set up, and he's very artistic. He's amazing. Anything he touches is just beautiful, right? So him and I set up and sold our beadwork. And then from there on out, it was beading all the time. And I would set up at the local powwows. And then I guess when Julia was, her honor dance when she turned 4 was in Baraga, Michigan. So we were on full blown powwow trail in 94, 95. So we would just travel, like sometimes Ohio and Indiana, but mostly just Michigan and a lot of the Upper Peninsula. Just a powwow every weekend. I traveled with a food booth, and for helping them set up and tear down, I got a corner section, so I didn't have to pay booth fees, which when you're 19 years old, that's great if you don't have to pay booth fees, right? So I was able to just sell the beadwork, and that's how Julia and I made a living. And she had this beautiful little dance outfit, and she would dance, and I would sell beadwork and just make beautiful connections and learn from the bead sellers. This one in particular, she loved sharing her knowledge with me. The elders would share their knowledge with me. Oh, you're pulling your string too tight. Don't pull your string so tight, you know. Just all the little details. One of the pipe carrier elders, she was just such a wonderful woman, Debbie Gutowski, and she told me she worked with a lot of prisoners and she did a lot of applique, and for them, she would go there, and it's such meditation. There's such meditation in beadwork because you have to be present, but also it's, for me, there's just this place where I can be, my spirit and my mind can be completely free and be present at the same time. It's really hard to explain because my muse comes in and a lot just is just created in that time and space. And it's such a beautiful relationship that I have with my loom. And I work a lot of things out, and there's a lot of intention and prayer. And sometimes I reminisce, and sometimes I'm just completely there, like when okay, the math is getting hard and this isn't working out, and then you're completely there. But sometimes I'm praying for me, sometimes I'm praying for you or any client, thinking about the future, just who knows what. A lot of books, I listen to a lot of books on audio, but this is like, that's my meditation space and that's my time. And a lot of that was from what I learned at Powwow. Traveling Powwow was put intention in it because every single action matters. It all
Interesting.
matters.
I want to talk about the creative process, but let's just kind of move through this journey. You did mention music. You were doing the Powwow. We're actually the same age. I mean, I graduated from high school in '93 too. So,
Yeah.
I was doing the Dead Show thing, and not the
not the beadwork.
and not the beadwork. I was selling grilled cheeses with my buddy Jason, and bootleg T-shirts, and maybe some other things, but whatever. We survived, and it was really very beautiful and profound time, and people kind of didn't realize that. I think my story's a little different than yours, in how I decided to handle adversity and whatever, but I kind of did it in a very typical teenagey rebellious sort of way, and yet found the music and the community and the drugs, but that also was a mixed bag. Was very informative also. But, obviously today you're known, largely in part for your connection to the music. So where does that come into your journey? Not necessarily, the bands that you're working with today, but just the music piece. How does that enter into the journey?
I mean, very young. My mom was in the choir, right? She loves music. And so we would come home, and on the weekends it was albums, right? She had this wonderful turntable, and it was albums, but it was musicals. It was Sound of Music or Jesus Christ Superstar or Pete's Dragon, all of this on vinyl. A lot of Barbra Streisand growing up, and Seals and Croft, because that's my mom, right? Like, you listen to what your mom listens to. So music was just always music. I still love musicals. It's ridiculous. I feel like life is just this big musical, and almost everything can be referenced back to anything Oliver. Who knows? All of it. I love musicals. And then I think I was probably 13 and I was wow, okay, this music is great. And it was, remember like Time Life would have the era music, the tapes that you could get. Andy Griffith was the gospel one. And then there was like who would, he'd be portraying that, but then there'd be the 60s one. And it'd be America, or any of the, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, of course. And all of that music, that whole 60s genre really fascinated me. I loved it so much when I was pretty young. I was like, this is cool, right? And maybe it was the babysitters and the radio stations they listened to was much cooler than Seals and Croft and Barbara Streisand, not to knock either of those. However, when your babysitter's blaring, some good 70s rock on WLAV, sweet. Way cooler, and it's pretty formative. Even with the hot leather seats in the summer on the way to the zoo, still you remember the music. So it's just, music just is like the soundtrack of our life, and many different examples. And I remember the first time that I heard a Dead song was, and knew, I mean, obviously I'd heard the Dead, but knew and was like, what is this? It was Ripple at the end of that movie Mask.
Mm-hmm.
When Rocky died, right?
Yeah,
and I was
Rocky Dennis, yeah.
And
sure.
I was it was so sad, right? Cher looking off, and it's profound and sad as it is, but then that song, and I was like, what is this song that keeps me crying? I'm like, I was crying to begin with, but dang, and that's when I was like, oh, this band. And I was pretty young, and then by the end of being 14, I was like, this band is awesome. This is the band. I knew them. I loved them. 15, got introduced to different flavors, like acid, the mind-opening things, all of the things, and the whole Dead culture, and the clothes are so beautiful, and they flow, and I had this one Aunt Eula. She recently passed, and I will never forget her at Riverside Park. Again, not at Powwow, but at Riverside Park. And I look over, and the wind was blowing, and her long, hippie, flowy dress was just blowing in the wind. And I was like, I want to be that girl. I want to be Aunt Eula. That's so beautiful. And I don't know, that just from a very young age, that the whole vibe just really, really grabbed me. And the music tells all stories, and it just makes you move in its own unique way, however it is, I guess, you're moving at the time. And so I've loved the Dead for a long time, and probably would have gone to shows, but I had Julia, and I was nursing, and pumps were weird then, and I wasn't going to leave my kid, and whatever. So I didn't go to my first Dead show until Richfield Coliseum. I guess it would have been 93. It was the year of the blizzard.
I was there. Oh, wow.
That's so great. I figured.
I was so there. Wow.
The blizzard, the first night. Oh, my God. I can't believe, that my mom let me go. And
that's wild that you say that, because that was a very
it was brutal,
bizarre evening.
Yeah.
I was in a motel in Medina, Ohio, and it was something else.
Yeah. Was it the one where there was the pool, and it was the drum circle, and like an inside pool, and all
No.
Oh, okay, that's what we
but
were.
I had that was a Holiday Inn that I
Yes,
think
it was
I
the
also
Holiday Inn.
stayed in at other shows. But this was sort of that's a long story. There was acid involved, and it was the exit that I grew up off of before I moved to Columbus, and I was anyway, that's a long story, but I was there.
It's so fun. And they opened with Cold Rain and Snow because they didn't cancel the second night. And we're like, that's kind of funny, but it's really freaking cold. And then the next year, same show, same week. It was the first weekend in spring, and it can be a blizzard or it can be beautiful. And it was so lovely, and it was the perfect spring day. And they opened with Cold Rain and Snow, which is hilarious. So I'm like, you remember us.
They had a sense of humor. They remembered. That was something to remember. But
yeah.
All right, so we've seen some shows together without knowing.
Yeah, we did a show together. Yeah. Who knew? That's so amazing. Yeah. Ironically, I just discovered this. I mean, not even within the last year. My husband's first show ever was my second show at Richfield Coliseum the spring year, like the true spring year. So we also did a show together and didn't know it until a year ago.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. So tell me. Let's just jump ahead a bit. Like, when does the guitar strap start to come into your work? And what I'm curious. I'm gonna just lay out a few things. You take it where you want, just kind of in the interest of time. But like, obviously, I want to hear the story. You know, how does this become what it is? And I also really want to know. Maybe tell that part first, but I do want to hear more about the creative piece and our experience together. I know how you work and how you've kind of what I think is like feel into it and bring that kind of spiritual source in to express yourself in alignment with a client, and with source to bring something beautiful into the world, which I believe is got to be a part of why you're having the success that you're having.
After I got off Powwow Trail, because Julia had to go to school and I couldn't be a gypsy anymore, like it was time to reel it in. And that was about the same time I got pregnant with my second child, my son Gabriel. And so I wasn't traveling powwows, I was home. And that's when my work really started to expand. So I didn't have to have so many bracelets, so many barrettes, so many necklaces, so many pouches on the table. No longer. I did not have to keep up inventory anymore. So I was able to have wider looms. I was able to, the pieces got much bigger. I was doing tapestries, a lot more time with applique. I could do whatever I wanted because there wasn't inventory. It was just creation. And I had this beautiful, perfect baby boy at home. Julia was in kindergarten. I had this beautiful, beautiful situation with my wonderful children and a safe place. And so I expanded the beadwork. The designs, they took more form. They became, it's funny, it's still primitive. Like when I look back at some of those pieces, I was like, oh boy, why did I think that was okay? That is not a curve. But, it takes that, right? It takes all of that trial and tribulation and learning this is the true curve. This is the true point. This is how you manipulate that in the space, which the straps definitely led to. But I just kept creating and I kept beating. And then I think it was like in the year 2000, I got a job with the county and I was a scale house attendant. And I did that for 13 years. And when there isn't a truck on the scale, I was able to bead. It was there for anywhere from 10 to 13 hours because they were long shifts and I was alone. So that was wonderful. I would just create. So beading never went away. I'm just filling in some gaps. I didn't start college until Julia left for college. So once Julia left and moved to California to go to college, that's when I started part-time because Gabriel was just going into high school and I still had a full-time job. I had a big house, in the woods with a wood burner. I had to cut and move and stack and burn 7 to 8 cords of wood a year. It was just Gabe and I at this point. Julia was in college, so it was just the two of us and a pool out back. And so I was maintaining all of this, but I really wanted to do college. Busy is my coping mechanism. I definitely know that this is true, and I knew I would miss Julia profoundly. So if I was busy with college and working and cutting wood and taking care of, the house and being present for Gabriel in every way, because high school is fun, kids are part of so many things and you don't want to miss any of it. You don't. It's, it's either their first band concert or it's their, last one of the year or whatever, or they've got this part or they're working on this piece or it's their senior year and you just don't want to miss any of that with your kids. Because every second is precious and it goes so fast, which it seems cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. So still all of that, balancing all of that. And then I met my husband, my current husband out here. My friend put on a music festival, Black Sheep, and Brady and I met out here in 2012. I was just out here visiting in Oregon. Here is Oregon. And then that just, that was instant. We knew what our future would be instantly. Funny circle of how he had seen me there in 2006 and, But we were both with a significant other at the time, so it just wasn't a thing. But he had asked, so I was single in 2012, so that was different. And it just set things in motion, and we knew instantly, okay, this is what we're doing. And I was 37, and he didn't have any kids, and I had always said I wouldn't have any more kids. But I think Miles just really wanted to be here, so we talked long and hard. And that Christmas when Brady came to visit, he's like, okay, so in the spring we're gonna either be a couple months pregnant or we're gonna go to New Orleans for Jazz Fest. I'm like, one or the other, bro. You're visiting. So needless to say, Miles is 12 and we didn't go to Jazz Fest. But so I left after Gabriel graduated. I sold my beautiful home, which wasn't easy to do. It was like orange countertops in this 70s house, big walkout ranch, 2-story, well, built-in basement, so walkout downstairs and upstairs. It was hard to leave because I'm still very close with all of my friends in Michigan, and Gabriel didn't want to move with us, so he stayed, and that was really hard. But we decided to move to Oregon and raise Miles out here. And I had always provided for my kids, off and on single mom their whole life. So being a provider was just part of who I was. I make my own money. I provide for my children. I had a really, really good job. I had a beautiful life. Relinquishing that and giving that up to trust and letting my husband take on that role wasn't easy for me at all. And then actually just a couple months after we moved out here is when my sister had passed. And it just wasn't, it was a lot happened at once. And we hadn't moved into our home yet because we had all the money and all the paperwork, to buy a house, but they needed my husband to be working for a while. And I was I am the one who had the consistent job for a long time, and whatever, the way that banks make their decisions. We had to wait to buy this house, and just a lot going on for a good 6 months there, and it was really, really difficult. And then we finally bought this house, and it just ended up being really, really beautiful. I finally got the loom box out because I hadn't been beading at all. And so I got the loom box out, and my friend came to me and said, I want a piece to represent me, right? Like I want all of I'm a midwife, I love the Pacific Northwest, all of these details, and I want a piece that is that, and a tapestry. And so the first piece that I had done when I finally got settled after all of that adversity and change is hard, even when you want it, change is hard. Like it's really difficult. Even when you're the one seeking it out and it's a wonderful opportunity, it's really difficult. So all of that got poured into this medicinal, beautiful piece of beadwork tapestry that I did for my friend. And that really triggered that flow. And after, almost 8 months of not beading, when I've had that my whole life, I finally was able to pour myself into it. And the creativity started flowing and the comfort started flowing again in a most beautiful way. And I had posted, a different friend encouraged me to put some stuff on Instagram. And I was like, no, I refuse to do social media. I don't want to be that girl. I resisted and resisted being, born in the 70s. You want to be tough and punk and be like, no, I'm not going to do that. But he's like, please get your artwork out there. So I did. And I put this beautiful bag of a Steal Your Face that I had made, and, just started kind of playing with Instagram a little. And one day, early in the morning, I got a message and it said, hi, I'm inquiring about the bag. I see that you have an Etsy, but this bag isn't for sale. My wife's birthday is coming up, and I'm wondering if I could have one made. By the way, I'm Oteil Burbridge with Dead & Company, and here's my phone number. So you bet my ass hauled it out like as soon as the house was quiet, and I was like, ding-a-ling-a-ling, hello, this is me. And then instantly a friendship was just created in a very solid way. That conversation was get to know each other 101 hardcore, and it was wonderful. And I said, I make guitar straps. Because I had made one. The first one I made was 2004 or 5, and it was for Chandler Kinchleb, Blues Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right. So Chandler actually had two at that point, and I was like, I can make you a guitar strap, and he's like, that sounds amazing. So we started working, and then that June we met him in Colorado for the Boulder shows, the Dead Company Boulder shows, and he got his two first straps. So really, it all boils down to Oteil scrolling, looking for a gift for his wife, and he came across a bag I didn't have in stock.
Wow. Isn't that crazy? I mean,
It's amazing.
I don't know. That comes back to me to faith,
Divinity.
and divinity. I mean, I don't know what the algorithm, how it works, and,
Me neither.
right? Fuck. I mean, how do you
Yeah,
explain that?
because it could have been, and I think about this all the time, because if I would have stayed at the county, I'd retire next spring, right? Like, think about that. I would get a pension from now until the day I die if I would have stayed in Michigan. My house would have been paid off, worth three times now what it was then. And I would, yeah, I wouldn't have to work anymore. Sorry, I just lost a lash. I wouldn't have to work anymore. And that, who knows? Would I have been beating like this? Would Oteil have found me? Would I have written a book? All of this, would it have come to be the way that it is had I stayed in Michigan? And would I have overcome so many things that I did, had I made that one decision? Is that fate? Is it just a series of things that happen? It's really wild to know the truth and the answer to that. And I have to have faith that, yeah, all of that stuff happened to bring me here. Because, yeah, it was that day, him scrolling, him finding that, and here we are.
Yeah, it's a I mean, I'll just say it even though it's like super cliche, but it's like just what's coming up for me now, like what a long strange trip it's been,
I mean,
right?
it's cliche
Yeah.
because it's true.
Yeah, and it's funny because I happen to love Dead and Company, and I love it for so many reasons. Because I love the fact that I still get to see this music in any form, and I know you work with a lot of the other bands playing the music. I love that too. I love it all.
Yes.
One of the things I love the most about it is I've had a chance to enjoy this music with my children.
Yeah.
I mean, I have kids that love the music. We go to shows. I mean, it's unbelievable. They go without me.
How old are
Like,
they?
my oldest is 24, 22, and 19. And,
Oh,
and,
okay.
and I don't think my kids would love music. Maybe, who knows? But I mean, they grew up around it. My wife and I love it. And there's something about it. So because we have this bond over the music and the Dead and I feel like I can say that, what a long strange trip, because it does feel like there's a common thread here, pardon the pun, but like it just does seem like it weaves into this divinity, this source, this spirit. I mean, I can't believe you brought up the snowstorm show. Like that was such a wild night in my life. Like, in some ways it was sort of traumatic. Like, all of this stuff, it is back to where we even started. There's some connection here that is really strong and powerful and beautiful and hard and, certainly tough to make sense of, but it does all kind of seem to fall into place piece by piece in some weird, wild, messy, beautiful way that lands us exactly where we're supposed to
Exactly
be.
where we're supposed to be. It's absolutely true. And I mean, for the good and the bad, right? Because if you can overcome, that is another tool in your toolbox. And sadly, so much of life is you don't realize you need a tool until you're in the middle of a project, whatever that project might be. And you're like, I need this tool. And then after you've overcome, you have that tool. You have a different library. It's like an immune system, right? You overcome a bug, you got that tool now. You've got that in your library. It's in your wheelhouse. And it's the music being an integral part of all of this. You know, like, because I would see it at a show, same as at a powwow. People are there for a reason, and the music is drumming, and it's summoning us, and it's bringing us together, and we're all experiencing the same beat. And we might be expressing it in a different way, but we are all experiencing the same, the leader of the band, right? Take me to the leader of the band. It's here we are. And not to idolize them by any means, but their energy and what they're putting in to the music is coming to us, and we are all experiencing this, and we are all expressing ourselves and have our own energy, and whether we're working through things or we're just straight up celebrating, whatever it may be, we are putting energy out. And the band can feel that. The band sees that. The band feels that. I mean, there's nothing like a show where everybody's like a dud. Not a Grateful Dead show ever, but, you know, like any show where people are just not present, they're duds. The band is done. They're giving you what you're giving them. I mean, I've been to a show, and Carl Denson's always an amazing musician, but everybody was at, like, it was in Portland, and there were like 4 big shows going on that weekend, and we did not pack that house. We were rocking, we were raging, but after an hour, he's like, I'm winding down, and we're like, no, but we're here, you know. But it's true, like, what we give, the band digests that, and then that goes back into their playing. And what you see with the Dead and Company movement, if you will, is, you know, it's kind of like it's revisited a movement and an era and the culture and so many of the elements that so many of us miss from back in the day. That, I mean, not that Rat Dog shows weren't awesome, because they were, or, you know, what was it? Further was amazing. This really, really had the gusto behind it to really redefine. And Oteil is an amazing musician, and Jeff, and them bringing on Jay, and they really have brought, I think that it was very, very precise in selection. And they did a really good job bringing this band together to be.
I think so too.
And for what it's worth, John Mayer opened this genre of music up into people who never in a million years would have ever known Grateful Dead.
Yeah, and I have a lot of respect for the reverence in which I think he seems to at least play the music, you know, and
he plays his heart out.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I'm always a fan. I'm like, anybody who criticizes it at all, I'm always like, show me a better band, you know? Or
don't go.
Or right, yeah, don't go, but like, to me, if you're, and I think I've talked about this with my friend Jason, who was at that Richfield show, and he's the one that got me into the music. He got me into the music, and really not just the Dead, but like music. And I was into music as a kid. My dad was into it, similar with, you know.
Yeah, whatever your parents are listening to, right? Yeah.
But into like going to shows and really like finding the jam bands, you know. Jason was my way in, and he'll go to Dead and Company shows, but he lives out in San Francisco, so he gets all the good stuff all the time, you know,
he does.
And it's cheap, you know, so he prefers that. But like, to me, it's like, I'll take all of it. I like it all. I just can't even believe I get a chance to listen to it, let alone at that level. And then, you know, like the Spheres, like a whole thing, like, you know, that experientially, like, just was such a natural progression to see a band continue to iterate and innovate and to, you know, evolve and allow for people to hear the music played. And I think this is back to what Jason, you know, and I both believe, like, and I wonder, you might know from talking to the band, like, I just think that the music just lives on, right? Music never stops. Like this, it's really about the music at the end of the day, and I think, you know, in part because of Dead and Company, and others, I think it just lives on now, like forever, maybe.
I mean, they've created a counterculture in America that has spread to all parts of the world. Yeah, the music will live on. It isn't going to go away. It tells so many stories. My mom doesn't quite get it. One time for Christmas, we were up late, and I think it was Christmas Eve, and maybe we were a little sauced up, and my daughter and husband were out here dancing, and we put on Terrapin, and so loud, and like I'm in the bathroom doing something, and I'm screaming Terrapin and singing it, and Julia and Brady are out here dancing like crazy, and my mom is like, I just don't understand. And I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I just listen to the music, and then other times she'll hear the music and be like, wow, you can't not move. And I'm like, you can't not move. It's true. You have to move.
All right. So let's, as we start to wrap up, just in the interest of time, because I could do this with you for days, and maybe we'll hang some time and do more. But well, let's just talk about what we did together, and so people understand. You made a strap for me. Leo crafted this, amazing,
beautiful guitar,
and so the process is really you personalizing the strap and really, getting out of me what I have, what my vision is, and allowing me to really, be a part of a creative process. And then kind of taking it wherever, you artistically know it can go, and making it something actually beautiful, right? Because I do this in my work too. I see myself as a very creative person, and I can envision something. I don't know how to make it real, So you take a vision, you make it real.
Right. I take feelings and visions and ideas and sentiment and stories and make it tangible. Absolutely. Because even so you firsthand know, you're like, I don't, where do we begin? I'm like, okay, so what kind of art do you like? And you mentioned the sunflowers and the roses, and you loved the terrapin, and the swirls. Remember, because the first set of swirls I set you, you're like, I don't know. It's a lot. And I'm like, okay, different swirls. And it just takes that like ebb and flow to really feel what you're looking for. But that when you nail it, you nail it. And like, I don't know how filled in you want it, right? Like, how much space do you want behind this? How much do you want it completely filled in? Like, all of those details, you just go back and forth, and you just really, like, I really get a feel for what somebody's looking for. I mean, your piece is so alive and vivacious. It's so good. I love it so much. The colors, it's so good. It really is a wonderful piece. And you were so fun to work with, and every experience is different. Like with Oteil, when he gave me his ideas, what he wanted, he's like, well, I want one dead themed, and I want one very Native American, so one vibrant and Grateful Dead, and one very earthy and native. And he loves them. Well, he has 4 straps now, but he loves them all. And it was interesting because I just sent a bunch of designs, and he's like, okay, I want this with this, and this with this, and that with that. And so of all the different sketch work, we created 2 different cohesive pieces. And the green earthy one, I'll never forget what I felt like when he finally picked that up. He was just like, oh, this one. Like, it was one of those things he was born with. Like when you see Duane Betts with his strap, I was like, oh, you wouldn't even, it looks like maybe he was born wearing that strap. It's just him. It is fully him. There's so many pieces like that where you see it on the person telling the story. Bob Weir's straps. So the first one was mostly Monet, a little bit of Natasha lending to that first strap. And then the second strap he had made, all 3 of the girls, Chloe included, had the elements they wanted present for that strap. And they wanted, very dead iconic, and that's why we decided Bertha on the back. But he loves the Native American design, so we kept that alive in the design. The Jolly Roger he just really loves the skeleton. So we went more Jolly Roger, less Steal Your Face, for the front image. And they're like, and then whatever you might think. And I was like, okay, so red-tailed hawks symbolize community and connection in that way. So I was like, I think that from the bones on the Jolly Roger, we need to do red-tailed hawks because he's kind of like he's the leader of the band, right? So community is what this all hinges on. Like, we're here because of community. It all hinges on that. And then I was like, okay, so when you see him singing, he looks like a wolf, right? So that's why the Wolf brothers are so perfect. And so that's when I drew that wolf and put the moon behind it because it came from all of his girls. And when I think of the moon, I think of, feminine energy. And then as the piece came along, the symbology, each aspect meant so much. Him with his girls being the moon behind him, and then him as the Jolly Roger, and us as the red-tailed hawk feathers, and just that earthy nature of color behind it. And on the back was Bertha, and I just felt like that was like the matriarch of their family. So that was Natasha. So that was just like their family crest of a piece is how I interpreted what the girls wanted and what they came to me for, and then how I translated all of that, and then all of that love and energy and the beauty of what a family means, and what my own experience of my family and what that means for me, and what their family out of the limelight means for them, because it can't be easy. No. To be a musician at that caliber. You can keep it. I would never want that.
But what a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that they're here to do that for us, but it's hard. Being close with Oteil, I know it's not easy, always. Like, there comes a point where you can go to breakfast and you can go eat some food outside the hotel room, and then closer to the show, nope, not leaving, because it's just crazy, and I can't, John Mayer doesn't even get to leave his room without being on. He's on, you're on all the time. It's crazy. It's intense.
Yeah, it's a wild life. But what you described is really beautiful. What a gift. And, then he gets to wear it, on his body, and then, it holds an instrument that's, giving so much to so many, and knowing that it's been crafted with such love and intention, and to include the family and your own energy and your own experience and your own family, and I just keep coming back to this connected community, this beautiful divine thing that is sometimes hard to make sense of, but it does have a feeling, a sense of really something deeply connected and beyond words beautiful. And and it's really it's great to have heard your story and to know you this way, and to share it with others. I don't know how much of this you've shared publicly or in one sitting, but hopefully people get to see. The reason I do this podcast is because I hope that people see themselves in you. And you are very resilient, and you shared a lot of what you shared openly and honestly. I felt vulnerably, but it's just your lived experience, so you might not even understand just how inspiring it is, just how much strength and perseverance and commitment and faith and resilience, to land where you are, and to just casually talk about, crafting something so beautiful with Bob Weir and his family. It's a dreamy ending, not that it's over, but a great place to land. And
yeah,
to me, it's like, wow. And I hope others who are creating things in their, own little tiny way, kids and others, see like what's possible when you just, keep going.
Keep creating, just keep doing it. And and let it fill you, right? As much as you're filling the pages of your own book, let it fill you and acknowledge it. And, I do want people to know that things can be hard. It's darkest before dawn. Every cliche that we have is there for a reason, because it does contribute to who we are. And I realize it's not always easy to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go forward. But what is the alternative, is to not go forward. And I know it's never really been an option for me. And maybe it's because I had kids at such a young age. I was 16, 21, and then 38 with Miles. But, it's when you've got love and you've got that, and I don't mean to be cheesy, but it's true. Like, love really is the foundation of all of it. And then to tie that back into faith, when you do find that a lot of people who have a belief system and a faith system, they do live happier lives, and I hope that people can find that, and whatever that looks like. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong or the one way. I don't think there is one way to express that. I know what works for me, and I think that it's been continuous, and music ties us all together in such a beautiful way. And you're right, when you see these musicians on stage, and you know what it's like to wear that strap now, right? You feel that. And even the leather is hand sewn. I don't use a sewing machine. That fear still exists of the pedal and the needle. So it's all hand done, and you can feel that. It's soft in a different way, and it's imperfect, because we are all very imperfect. And that's what makes us divine.
Perfectly imperfect, Jenny, thank you for taking the time to do this with me, and for sharing your craft and your love in the gift of this strap. And I hold it and own it, and do it with a lot of pride and joy. So,
and I love that you have a Leo instrument. His work is amazing, so that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have him on the podcast too.
Good.
About half of the story, but that was also a dream come true. So
good.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch for sure. I look forward to dancing at a show with you, and
another one. We'll know it this time.
Yeah, right. All right.
All
Thanks,
right,
Jenny.
take care.
Take care.